Hello and welcome to Glasgow Rangers Nation with me, your host Owen, the channel that brings you your team every single day, channel that keeps you up to date with all that is goings on at Ibrox. Well, it is the 31st of October, guys. Can't believe this year has nearly ended, and it's been a fantastic month for the channel. Thank you for your phenomenal support. Well, do you know what? It's November tomorrow, so obviously there's Christmas coming up, Christmas fixtures, the Celtic game on the 30th. January's round the corner. We're going to talk a little bit about January in this video and what has been speculated as regards to Philippe Clement and his desires for January, and obviously what the club will do as regards January. We obviously had a little bit of a look ahead as well to the game coming up on Wednesday night against Dundee and looking at Rangers' next few fixtures as well. Look, I think if we start with that game, let's start with the Dundee game, guys. We're going to get to a perspective. We're going to talk about prospective signings and where we need to strengthen in a bit. So hang on for that. It is coming, and I'd love to have your opinions on that. But let's start off with, obviously, the game against Dundee at Dens Park on Wednesday night. Now, it is a situation where we are going to have to change the team. We are going to have to look at different players and different options. And I don't particularly want to talk Lammers and Dessers, and I don't want to talk about replacing them with McCausland and Danilo because we'll do that later. But obviously, Nicholas Raskin is likely to be out. Raskin went over on his ankle. At the moment, there's no sort of news as to regards the nature of Nicholas's injury. And look, I know Raskin hasn't had the best of seasons and has been in flashes, has been very good, but at other times has struggled. He looked better. He looked better against Hibs, did okay against Hearts, wasn't great against Sparta. So look, it's been very much a mixed picture for Raskin this year. But I think we've got to obviously give Philippe Clement time to work his magic on him. But it does look like Raskin is going to be obviously missing the game on Tuesday night. Which is obviously unfortunate, but it does obviously give options to Rangers as to who they get in and replace him with. Now, one of the primary options obviously could be the returning Jose Cifuentes, who was on the bench for Rangers on a Sunday. Now, obviously, Cifuentes is a box-to-box midfielder. That's what he's been signed for. Obviously, we haven't really seen the best of Cifuentes, have we? Now, part of that I really feel in terms of not seeing the best of Cifuentes isn't always down to him. Yes, he has a part to play in that, and the way he plays in games obviously does play a part. But for me, one of the biggest issues has been how Michael Beale has used him. Look at a number of games. Beale used him as kind of like a right winger or a bit of a right-sided midfielder to support Tav, and that's really not his game. I'm really hoping that looking at what Cifuentes has done, looking at the fact that that he was looked at by English Premier League clubs who were reportedly keen on taking him to the EPL. He's a good player. Don't get me wrong. I think there is a good player in there. And I really hope that Philippe Clement can get the best out of Jose Cifuentes. It wouldn't be great if starting on Wednesday against Dundee, that was the time. I mean, Cifuentes is kind of a perfect replacement for Nicholas Raskin. He is a box-to-box midfielder. He's an attacking midfielder, eye for a pass, likes to thrust forward and support the attackers. So very much how Raskin has kind of wanted to be used by Clement over recent games. So look, Cifuentes is, I think, one massive option for Rangers on Wednesday. Another possible option is, of course, the returning Kieran Dowell. Now, Dowell can obviously play attacking midfield. He can play wide. He can play in those two positions, just in front of the back four. He is a very flexible midfielder. He's got a great eye for a pass. One of the things that perhaps goes in Dowell's favour over Cifuentes, and you think back to some of the games that Dowell played in before he got injured, is Dowell has that aggressive tendency. He has the ability to get stuck in, doesn't mind a tackle, left-footed. Brings a bit of extra left-footed balance to the team. But then, are we going to want to see Dowell further forward, maybe, or as an option off the bench? It's a nice problem to have, isn't it? To actually have Dowell and Cifuentes back, to actually have some options back in the midfield again. We went through a spell very much, obviously, when Dowell and Cifuentes were out, where there was a real lack of options, a lack of what's the word, offensive options, wasn't there? Was obviously Jack, who's more defensive. There was Lundstrom, who's more defensive. Bailey Rice, who didn't get an opportunity, is probably more defensively minded. So it's nice to have Cifuentes and Raskin, and Dowell as options. And for me, it's really got to be one of those two that replaces Raskin on Wednesday, even if we only get 60 minutes, 70 minutes out of them. I just think for me, playing Lundstrom and Jack is too negative. They're both more defensively minded. And, Clement likes one to sit and one to go. That's not really Lundstrom's game, to go box to box. It's not Jack's game. I know Lundstrom has in the past done that, but he's not great at it, is he? He's not a fantastic attacking midfield player or eight. That's how we say, rather than attacking midfield player. It's more your Cantwells or your Lawrences. So look, for me, it's got to be one of those two guys to replace him. Look, who do I think? I would go with Cifuentes. I have Cifuentes, and then I'll probably bring Dowell on for Cifuentes. But give them both the opportunity to play against Dundee. This is a game we should be winning. Again, it's talking of that approach that we need to be taking to these games. That we are Rangers. We don't go anywhere now and think, this is going to be a tough game. It's going to be a hard game because we're playing. That's not how we need to look at games. That's not how Graham Souness's Rangers face teams. That's not how Walter Smith's Rangers face teams. That's not how Dick Advocaat's Rangers face teams. And that's not how we need to do it now. And hopefully Philippe Clement can install that philosophy. It does seem that is his philosophy. This, I don't want to say arrogance, but confidence, shall we say? That's a better word, isn't it? Confidence that we can go on and we can win whatever game we're in. And that's what we really need to see from this team going forward. In terms of their options, like I said, Cifuentes is right-footed. He's an attacking midfield. He can play the 8 role. He has the ability to break beyond the strikers. He has the ability to play a pass. So that's certainly something in his favour. Dowell obviously can go out wide. He can play the pass. He has a bit of an aggressive streak to him. He's probably not as physically strong as Cifuentes, which obviously might go against him. And so it is a toss-up. It really is a toss-up. And like I said, I would go personally with Cifuentes. But on the Working Lunch podcast, which comes up later, I will be obviously discussing the team news with you and the team, my team that I pick with you as well. Right, let's move on. Obviously, we'll talk a bit more about the Dundee game in the pod at lunchtime. If you want to come and join me, that'd be fantastic. Guys, we're doing a lunch pod today because, as I explained on the comments, I'm having difficulties getting time on an evening to actually do these podcasts because I am working. Unfortunately, this is not my full-time job. I would love it to be my full-time job eventually. The aim of the channel is to grow the channel to such a point where we can get press access to Ibrox. And become very much part of the sort of heart and hand four lads kind of this is Ibrox kind of area crowd. We've had some wonderful support from a lot of those podcasts, from Heart and Hand, in particular, from Scott McPike from Rangers Assessment, SM Media. He's been absolutely fantastic. That's the aim. That's where we want to get to. And obviously with your support, we can get there. That's where we're aiming to be, myself, Victoria. And look, in the long term, we may bring other podders on. That may be the way we go with the channel. It very much depends how the channel grows, how the views grow, how the channel succeeds. If you want to get involved with the channel, please let me know. Look, I'll bang up the contact details down below. So if you do want to get involved, let me know. It'd be great to hear from you. Anyway, let's talk January, shall we? Look, I know it's a couple of months away, but Clement has kind of already alluded to it, hasn't he, by talking about the fact that he does feel that this team is very much light in certain positions and has a lack of strength in depth, or a lack of strength or lack of character at certain positions. Not that he said character, but you kind of get that sense from where he's coming from. Now, I think we all can kind of agree on certain positions that we think need strengthening. I think defence is obviously a key one. I think the failure to sign a centre-back in the summer was a huge error by Michael Beale and the board. There was a number of players linked, obviously Austin Trusty, Jonathan Panzo, for example, but it looks like the only real option there was Austin Trusty from what was been said, and that once it was decided that he was going to go to Sheffield United and the chance to sign him had gone, Rangers didn't appear to have a list of alternatives to him, which to me is utterly surprising. And maybe that shows the fact we do need a director of football and a real scouting department. Let's park that. We'll talk about that in a minute. But after Trusty was kind of sold to Sheffield United, there was no backup plan. There was no plan A. There was no plan B. Panzo apparently was talked about. He's obviously with Cardiff now. Cresswell's still with Leeds. They were the options that were talked about. But it sounds from what Michael Beale was saying at the start of the season, it was only Austin Trusty they were interested in. When that fell through, well, what happened? Nothing, did it? That we kind of left it and didn't move it any further forward. So that for me is just ridiculous. Now, that shows to me that a lack of a director of football was a critical error. I think, if we had a director of football, someone with more talent and more ability at spotting players than Ross Wilson, there may have even been a plan B, a plan C, a plan D, and a plan E, and a plan F, so that once the Trusty move fell through, that we did what other clubs do, that most other clubs in Europe do. They have a target list. Their scouting department, their director of football, their managers sit down and they come up with a list, and they come with, this is the player I really want, but if he's not available, then this player will be a good option. If he's not available, then this player will be a good option. But it seemed in terms of centre back and defence, there was realistically nobody else looked at properly by the club. Now, the hope has got to be that once we appoint a director of football, which James Bisgrove said is imminent, or in the next few weeks, months, whatever it was, he kind of generally fudged over that statement, and whoever that may be, whether that be a Davy Weir, a Paul Mitchell, a Carlos Bocanegra, a Christian Nerlinger, whoever that may be, someone who comes in and assists the manager in drawing up those lists of targets and having that plan A, plan B, plan C, plan D, plan E, plan F, and that we are well structured. Now, what will help is the fact that we've brought in a new scouting structure in terms of using data analysis and AI and technology to look at players. And that, for me, is a real positive step forward, because that's the way that modern European clubs are moving. And it's nice to see Rangers moving into the 21st century finally. Now, there's been a lot of talk in the media and a lot of reports in the media that Clement is obviously anxious to strengthen the squad in certain positions, so that's fine. The centre-back are identified. Left-back is another possible position, I think, that does need to be strengthened. Borna Barisic is out of contract at the end of this season. I think to give Borna a new contract will be a massive, massive mistake. Look, Borna's been a great servant in the past, but it's time to move on. The guy has, he's not showing any development. He's only going to get slower. He's only going to get worse, because as you get older, unfortunately, it's a fact of life. You lose your speed. You lose some of that ability. And Borna and Tav, to some degree, will lose that as they get older. Neither of them are getting any younger. Ridvan, Ridvan's is an option, but I just think that his lack of physicality, his lack of height, as we saw on Sunday against Hearts, cost him in this league. And whilst he can obviously get away with that in the Turkish league, where there's less of a physical approach, less of that aerial bombardment that goes on in this league from some of those hammer throwing teams like St Johnstone, like Livy, like those, like the likes of Ross County, where he can be exposed with those balls to the back post. I think there's a need to go and get a left back as well. So I think that is very much on the option. Now, one of the other big desires is to go and get a winger. With the fact that Ryan Kent, even Michael Beale said Ryan Kent has never been replaced or was never replaced. Fashion Sakala was allowed to leave. The only real out-and-out winger we've got is Rabbi Matondo. Now, I know that Tom Lawrence can play there. I know Dowell can play there. I know that Seema can play there, and Seema's done a great job on the left in the games where he has played. He's scored goals. He's worked the fullback over. But I just feel with those players, they're more suited to a more central role rather than playing out wide. I think there's a need for a winger. Now, one of the things I want to see before the January transfer window opens is thus using Ross McCausland to seeing if we can save some money, by looking at McCausland and thinking, can McCausland play there? He certainly looked very good when he came on Sunday. He looked lively. He looked good going forward. He looked aggressive. He played a couple of balls in that were very promising indeed. So McCausland, for me, could be an option. Now, lots of Rangers fans don't rate Cyril Dessers and don't rate Sam Lammers, and many of them are even suggesting that we should try and ship them on in January. The concern being of obviously who would want them. That's the big concern. And could you get enough money for them? Now, realistically, we're going to take a loss on them. I don't think we're going to get back that £7.5–8 million we spent on them. It just isn't going to happen. I think a couple of million at best for both of them is what we're going to get. So that's really bad signing, really bad business by Michael Beale. So thank you, Michael Beale, for another situation you've left this club in. Now, someone who has been repeatedly linked with a move to Rangers and very much divides the fan base is Lawrence Shankland. Lawrence Shankland looked good against Rangers on Sunday, got a goal, linked play well, passed the ball well, got involved in the build-up play. I think he did very well. Yes, he hasn't had the most predictive season in front of goal. He scored 3 goals in 16 games. But if you look back across Shankland's career, he's always been a player who's scored goals. I mean, this is by competition how many goals and assists he has in the Scottish Champion. So we've got the Championship, the Premiership, the League One, League Two, the Jupiler League, the Scottish Top Six split, the Premiership playoffs, and the Premiership relegation. He's played in all of those for the teams that he's played with. So Championship, 120 appearances, 62 goals, 12 assists, so 74 goal contributions in 120, which is pretty decent. In the Premiership, 88 appearances, 31 goals, 9 assists, that's 40 goal contributions, so just under 1 in 2. League One, 43, 33 and 13. League Two, 33, 11 and 2. Didn't have the best time in Belgium, but 9 goal contribution in 26 is not disastrous. If we look at his contribution by team, that's the wrong slide. He has done very well for Hearts. He's done very well for Dundee United. He's a guy who scores goals in this league. Now, many people have said and suggested that, as a backup to Danilo, as someone who could possibly, come in and play after European games, he could be a very promising option for Rangers. Now, look, I know he is someone that, massively divides the fan base. There are those that think Shankland should be signed, and, if we can get him for 1.5-2 million, given the fact that he's only contracted till June 2025, so a year and a half left on his deal, it would be a good move for the club. There are others who just think it would be a disaster, who don't want Shankland, who don't rate Shankland. I've never really he is kind of like a Sakala-esque player, isn't he, in terms of the fact that he divides the fan base to such an extent. And it is quite strange. There was a couple of comments the other day on one of the videos that Lawrence Shankland would be a good signing for Rangers. I honestly think that he couldn't be any worse than Searle. And as a backup striker, is he necessarily going to be terrible? I don't think so. I think he could be an option to come in and perhaps be a number 3 behind Seema and behind Danilo. I know that's not a popular opinion of the fan base. Like I said, he is someone who vastly divides the fan base in terms of what they think of him and whether they think he should be a Rangers player. He is Scottish, obviously, which would help our European quotient as well. We look at him this is by club now. I mean, Dundee United, 49 goal contributions in 74, so better than 1 in 2. 40 goals in 74 games, again, better than 1 in 2. United, 61 goals in 73, 24 goal contributions. That's 85 goal contributions in 71 games. Hearts, 35 goals in 63. Again, better than 1 in 2. 6 assists. That's 41 goal contributions in 63, which is pretty decent. St Mirren, 14 and 7. Queen's Park, 14 and 2. Beershot, 5 and 4. Greenock Morton, 4 and 1. Aberdeen, 1. He gets a lot of criticism for his time in Belgium, but you look at Beershot, they're not a big team. They're not a team that are going to have a lot of success in the Belgian Jupiler League. That's a Standard Liège and Antwerp and Anderlecht, the Club Brugge, Genk. They're the power teams of that league. Your Beershot is like a Livy or a St Johnstone. They're a very sort of low achieving team. So the totals he got there are not terrible. You look at those facts and figures and those goals and assists. If you were to compare them with Sam Lammers and with Cyril Dessers over their careers, do they stack up against Shankland? Is Cyril Dessers a better option, than Lawrence Shankland? And yeah, I get that you shouldn't obviously think because he's better than Dessers and he should be signed because Dessers is awful. That's just the way it is. But look, at the end of the day, I think could be a possible option. I'm not saying he's a starting striker, but he's someone who knows how to score goals in the SPL. He's someone who knows where the goal is in the SPL. I mean, he's played for Leuven and Lokeren. This is Dessers now we're talking about. 40 and 7, 56 in 19 for Utrecht. 43 and 11, so 43 appearances, 11 goals. So let me just go back. Let me just re-clarify that. So that's 7 goals in 40 appearances for Lokeren, 19 goals in 56 appearances for Utrecht. For Genk, 11 appearances, 43 appearances, 11 goals. And in Cremonese, 7 goals in 29 appearances, 20 and 41 in Feyenoord. You know, realistically, Dess's figures are actually worse than Lawrence Shankland's. You know, you compare that with Sam Lammer's figures. Sam Lammer's figures are equally as bad as Cyril Dess's. In fact, you know, Sam Lammers has not had a decent season since he was at Herenveen, which was, you know, a fair few years ago. So Shankland could be a much better version. I mean, you look at Sam Lammer's statistics. You know, in his time with PSV Eindhoven, he made 29 appearances, only scored 6 goals. In his time on loan at Herenveen, he scored 1935, which is still to this day his most promising. With Atalanta, 19 appearances, 2 goals. With Eintracht Frankfurt, 22 appearances, 2 goals. With Empoli, 14 appearances and a goal. With Sampdoria, 20 appearances and a goal. It's hardly impressive, is it? I mean, you go back over his last, his last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 seasons. His goal totals 2, 0, 2, 1, 1. I mean, that's genuinely dreadful. And you know, you look at the stats of Dessers and Lammers and you kind of think, what did Michael Beale see in them? And, you know, did they have some compromising pictures of him or something? I don't know. But, you know, Shankland, I think, would be a better bet than Dessers and a better bet than Lammers. And certainly as he's got older, he's matured. You know, he looks good in terms of linking up play. He's got a bit more creative flair. I just think that, you know, in the past when Rangers have been less snobby about signing Chris Boyd, for example, you know, we've done well, and I think we've got to stop being so snobby about signing Scottish players. Yes, I know there's a Rangers tax, of course, I understand that, but Shankland could be an option, and he's certainly someone that Barry Ferguson mentioned today on Go Radio. Quite where Clermont wants to strengthen, I don't know. He hasn't really kind of outlined that, but he is, as he said, giving each player a white piece of paper and letting them, you know, start again. But I'm sure by now he has firmed up some opinions on some of the players and has seen that they quite clearly are not up to the task. Well, obviously, guys, come and join us for the podcast later. It'd be great to have as many of you in there as possible, chatting all things Rangers. As always, guys, on the way out, please smash the sub. But the main 2 things I always need to do for me, number 1, smash the like, and number 2, remember, we are the people.